G'day everyone, Nodjar Witness here with a very important PSA. Mrs. Snarky is the absolute best!
Howdy, y'all! Today I'm back again with Wonder Lady, and we're continuing our series of Senecas on anger. How are you doing today, Wonder Lady?
Awesome.
Awesome! So we're on section 2 of this essay or book. Next, if you choose to view its results and the mischief that it does, no plague has cost the human race more dear. You will see slaughterings and poisonings, accusations and counter-accusations, sacking of cities, ruin of whole peoples, the persons of princes sold into slavery by auction, torches applied to roofs, and fires not merely confined within city walls, but making whole tracts of country glow with hostile flame. We're really highlighting just how far anger can take us and just how much damage it can do to societies.
It's still happening.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Do you think that a lot of the stuff that is happening is due to anger? Or is it merely just profits? Or like how do you think that dynamic works in today's age?
I see less of the anger. Well, it's odd. I don't think governments get angry.
Yeah.
I think the people get angry. And a really good tool for your government is to get people angry.
Agreed.
So if you can manipulate a populace emotionally, you can theoretically do whatever you want.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because when you have outrage and anger and, all these emotions kind of flooding your entire body, as we discussed in the first section, it does affect your entire body, but it also shuts down your more reasonable ability to analyze the situation, and you just kind of fly off the handle.
Right, and it's good to have like the type of anger that isn't necessarily directed at anything. Like I think the pro-life discussion, yeah,
Oh,
if you notice, it always happens around election years,
it
and
does.
people focus more on that than policy
Right.
because no one can leave that subject alone. And okay, let's get angry. Everyone's angry. Everyone's distracted. Everyone's ready to quote unquote go to war, and they are in a
Mhm.
way. Meanwhile, government, hey, oh, by the way, you have to pick a person. Oh, yeah, you. Anyway, what I was saying, it's perfect.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because whenever you think of the opposition party as murderers or advocates of murdering,
Yeah.
which is, of course, hyperbole for abortion,
Yeah.
then you can get them to vote against their own interest. And we've seen that demonstrated very recently.
Time and time again.
Yes, yes. So that's a very good example.
Thank you. Yay.
Yay! See the foundations of the most celebrated cities hardly now to be discerned. They were ruined by anger. See deserts extending for many miles without an inhabitant. They have been desolated by anger. Wow. So I think this kind of highlights, the scorched earth that a lot of people would during this time leave behind them when they would conquer a place or when they were, trying to invade or plunder or what have you, when they would go to war.
Right. Or drop a nuclear bomb. Hey,
Yeah.
made it modern.
Yeah, definitely. Scorched earth. And oddly enough, this climate change kind of comes to my mind when I read this, and it's funny because I know that this is my confirmation bias kind of thing, because of course Seneca wasn't thinking about global warming, but I mean, that's kind of the result of anger, because we have all these elected officials that were elected because of outrage and this what do you call it? Unrest among the forgotten masses,
Right.
so to speak. So, and they're climate change deniers. And so it's literally ruining the planet.
It is.
Maybe that sounds like
Hyperbole?
hyperbole. But I mean, this is the direct consequence of that outrage
Definitely.
that is felt by the left behind, right? So, okay. See all the chiefs whom tradition mentions as instances of ill fate. Anger stabbed one of them in his bed, struck down another, though he was protected by the sacred rights of hospitality, tore another to pieces in the very home of the laws, and in
Oh
sight
my.
of the crowded forum, bade one shed his own blood by the barricade's hand of his son, another to have his royal throat cut by the hand of a slave, another to stretch out his limbs on the cross, and hitherto I'm speaking merely of individual cases. So I guess maybe this is referencing certain specific things that he has seen in his
Right.
lifetime. Of course, Seneca was a Roman,
Uh-huh.
so, and during that time they had crucifixions and slavery and horrible things happening around them.
Oh yeah. And I don't like things like this are so nuanced. These references
Yes.
because like just like we might drop little hints of culture into a speech or a written project, people of his time would know exactly which person,
Hmm.
and and we can only sit there and accept this as a vague example.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the references that we've made so far about our current culture and what's going
Right.
on. So it's
So
absolutely no different. Things have not changed. We have not progressed from this anger.
right, and we could actually pick out instances, say like someone who stretched out their arms on a cross to me would be the young woman who was mowed over by the car in Charlottesville.
Oh, wow. That's a profound example.
I mean, you can pick. I mean, maybe it's not exactly the same thing. However, she was trying to do something like stand in a street, and
Yeah.
and she was basically crucified for being there.
Yes.
Crucified with a car, not a cross, but hey.
Yeah, and I can't help but remember and recall the angered look on the faces of the people that were marching down the street with torches in their hands, screaming blood and soil. Those
Right,
were angry people.
right,
And was it for good reason? No, it was not, because anger shuts down the reason.
right. Some people will say that the people who are marching because nobody's been listening.
Mm-hmm.
Other people will say that people are marching to get attention because, like, they don't know how else to express their words. They're so angry.
It could be, I mean, case by case basis, really. I
Right,
think ultimately, I think what is at the heart of this is anger. They're angry because of whether it's propaganda that they've read, the whole white genocide bullshit. And, they're surrounding themselves with ideas that would make a person angry,
right,
disguising it in terms of, loyalty to one's race or loyalty to the family, loyalty to country. And really all that it is loyalty to
being pissed
anger.
off. Yeah,
Yeah, it's just they're dedicated to their anger. But that's just me throwing out ideas. So
very important ones, in my opinion.
now, what if you were to pass from the consideration of those single men against whom anger has broken out to view whole assemblies cut down by the sword, the people butchered by the soldiery let loose upon it, and whole nations condemned to death and one common ruin, as though by men who either freed themselves from our charge or despised our authority? Why, wherefore, is the people angry with gladiators, and so unjust to think itself wronged if they do not die cheerfully? It thinks itself scorned, and by looks, gestures, and excitement turns itself from a mere spectator into adversary. So that's kind of exactly the road that we've been going down.
Yeah.
And it continues, everything of this sort is not anger, but the semblance of anger, like that of boys who want to beat the ground when they have fallen upon it, and who often do not know why they're angry, but are merely angry without any reason or having received any injury, yet not without some semblance of injury received, or without some wish to exact a penalty for it. Thus they are deceived by the likeness of blows, and are appeased by the pretended tears of those who deprecate their wrath, and thus an unreal grief is healed by unreal revenge. Wow. So it's basically, I mean, these are people throwing a tantrum. And it kind of reminds me of the whole victim martyr kind of complex that you often see from specific religions or specific parties, political parties, or the like, or races, just like we were talking about earlier.
Well, it's funny, the whole victim murder thing. I mean, nowadays it could be, you look at it like it could be Trump's tweets, or you could turn around and listen to some political leaders and be like, you can hear them when they were talking about this a few months ago, like, what's with these immigrants? We're separating them, we're putting their children into cages and blah blah blah. We're keeping them safe. Why are they throwing a tantrum? And then the people react and how could you do that? I don't agree with that. And it's like, why are you throwing a tantrum?
Yeah, it's
Like, it's always, but yet we can sit there and listen to the president and go, why are you throwing a tantrum? And it seems to be the theme of 2018, actually.
Yeah, it really does. It really suits the whole feeling that we've had in the past couple years, really.
Yeah, it's like, oh, why are you an SJW? You're just throwing a tantrum. Why are you complaining about SJWs? You're just throwing a tantrum. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's there.
The thing that really bothers me about this whole thing is the fake outrage tends to, I mean, it feels real, right? It
Right.
must, or people wouldn't seem so legitimately angry, but it waters down the idea of actual victims existing. And so I really hate that it takes away from that, because it's like you said, but the children who were caged, they were victims.
Right.
So, this justification of, well, they're bringing drugs, they're bringing whatever crime, and they're rapists, they're kids.
Right.
You're a fucking liar. And I think in section 3, we're going to kind of go into that a little bit, it looks like.
Okay.
So, section 3, quote, we often are angry, says our adversary, not with men who have hurt us, but with men who are going to hurt us. So you may be sure that anger is not born of injury, unquote. Wow. That's exactly what we're kind of hearing these days.
I hear that towards the caravan, don't you?
Uh-huh. Certainly.
They haven't hurt us yet.
Yeah, so we need to boost up security and, gas people who are trying to enter the country legally to seek asylum. Yeah.
Right, and if you have to treat someone with violence first, you are angry.
Yes.
There is something going on behind there. And whether that anger comes from fear or whatever, because, like, I don't know about you, but there's too many facets to anger just to say, where it comes from.
Yeah, it's often derives from fear. Often. And some variety. But yeah, it's difficult to pinpoint anything when you're talking about a process.
Yeah.
Because anger is, essentially a process, and you can't just go, well, here's the angry gene, or something like that.
I wish we could.
Yeah, but that's not how it works.
No.
So, it is true that we are angry with those who are going to hurt us, but they do already hurt us in intention. And one who is going to do an injury is already doing it. Oh, there's the intention bullshit again, right?
Uh-huh.
So, like, how do you perceive intention? How do you know what someone's intentions are? Okay, Miss Cleo. The weakest of men, argues he, are often angry with the most powerful. So you may be sure that anger is not a desire to punish their antagonists, for men do not desire to punish them when they cannot hope to do so. In the first place, I spoke of a desire to inflict punishment, not a power to do so. Now, men desire even what they cannot obtain. In the next place, no one is so low in station that it is not to be able to hope to inflict punishment, even upon the greatest of men. We are all powerful for mischief. So what do you think?
Is he doing the small dog syndrome argument?
Small
Like,
dog.
they bark the loudest, like they're the more aggressive dog.
Yeah.
You get the big dog, they're chilled out, and the little dog, you know. I think this might be a classic, timeless argument. The little man syndrome. Didn't he just because you might be angry, but if you're powerless, of course you're going to be angry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Nietzsche's writing a little bit, because he talks about the main desire that men want is, or human beings rather want, is power, and it is that striving for power that drives them. So, well, at least this is a very broad explanation for Nietzsche.
Oh,
But
of
yeah,
course.
it's the same. The little guy, the underdog. Everybody roots for the underdog, right?
Right. Like the whole idea that the powerless will bite and the powerless will be angrier than
Yeah.
the one with the power. Kind of see it.
Yeah, it's just classic conflict theory. Aristotle's definition differs little from mine, for he declares anger to be a desire to repay suffering. It would be a long task to examine the differences between his definition and mine. It may be urged against both of them that wild beasts become angry without being excited by injury, and without any idea of punishing others or requiting them with pain. For, even though they do these things, these are not what they aim at doing. So this kind of shows a little bit of a difference between our anger and the anger of the animal. The anger of the animal is short-lived. They don't tend to cling to their passions as long as human beings do, because human beings have this whole memory and planning thing that makes the dynamic even more detrimental to them. They'll hold on to a grudge forever. So this is kind of it kind of explains the passions a little bit more, what the Stoics mean by passion. It's basically emotions, and they distinguish the difference between what they call a proto-passion and a passion in
Well,
this manner, because
what's a proto-passion? I don't understand.
so the proto-passion is the initial feeling that you get in the circumstance that you can't control. And the passion is something that you hold on to for a longer period of time. Let me Google this real quick and make sure that I'm correct. Okay, so the Stoic passions basically are forms of emotions that result in suffering. So when you hold on to it, the emotion, and you let it fester, it's kind of like the Buddhist idea that we suffer because we cling to things.
Okay.
And so the proto-passions are the stuff that you just can't help. Like if you are in a dangerous situation, of course, you're going to have initial reactions of anger or fear or whatever. This cannot be helped.
Right.
But if you hang on to those, then it becomes the Stoic form of passion. And that's that emotional suffering that we are subject ourselves to is something that we want to get away from. So it's not that the Stoics think that emotions are bad. It's that they think that to hold on to them for longer than is necessary is an unwise decision, and it's best to let it go.
Okay.
You got it?
I think so.
Or do I need to redefine it in simpler terms? Because this is kind of something that is often misunderstood about the Stoic definition of passions and emotions.
Well, I kind of get it, but at the same time, it's like, but what about this and what about that's going through my head? So, it's not helpful.
Well, that happens. I do the same thing.
I'm always trying to connect an idea to an incident.
Right. Well, that's what's so good about studying this is you can kind of reflect on it whenever you're going through it.
Right.
And that's why I find it helpful in everyday life, because now that you understand that there's some emotions that you can't control, but clinging to them is unhealthy, then you can actually utilize this to make your life better, or to not necessarily achieve eudaimonia, which is happiness, philosophical happiness,
Mhm.
or peace, contentment, rather. Contentment is the best way to define eudaimonia. And that is something that we shall always be striving toward if we want to live a good Stoic life.
Right.
So, moving on. We must admit, however, that neither wild beast nor any creature except man is subject to anger. For, whilst anger is the foe of reason, it nevertheless does not arise in any place where reason cannot dwell. Wild beasts have impulses, or proto-passions, fury, cruelty, combativeness. They have not anger any more than they have luxury. Yet they indulge in some pleasures with less self-control than human beings.
I disagree.
Yeah?
Uh,
Why?
I think he didn't arrive to that conclusion with enough information to reach a verifiable conclusion, because like crows, they will, if you throw a rock at one of them, they talk about you and they'll keep talking about you for 3 years. Like if you show up, they know what you look like because they've been talking about you. They
Right.
described you. They're still pissed. Don't you dare throw that rock. I'm gonna crap on your car. I'm pretty sure crows get angry and stay angry.
Yep. Agreed.
So, like, to say that animals don't get mad, yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do. You're absolutely right. And we've observed this a lot more than they had observed it at that time.
Well, I
So
think that's what I mean. I don't necessarily think he's wrong about everything, but when it comes to animals, I'm thinking his database wasn't full.
exactly. Yeah. He can't be blamed for that, but at the same time, it's kind of like the whole foundation of Stoicism is to try to strive to be in an agreement with nature, or in tune with nature.
Right.
And the nature that they had observed at that time seemed to be, I guess, a lot more peaceful than the human condition. So that's what he's trying to highlight. And though he's wrong about certain things, because we do know that crows have the ability to kind of reason and plan, and they're a lot more intelligent than we once thought.
Right.
So I imagine that they might have these same issues.
Quite
And
possibly. I know they have funerals.
yeah,
Um,
yep,
but the idea that I think what is the problem might be like how humans don't like to think of themselves as an animal.
exactly. So the whole idea behind the spirit and whatnot was a very, very deeply ingrained within the Stoic idea
Right.
that we are citizens of the cosmos and that we're sons and daughters of Zeus and yada yada yada. They were theistic for the most part. Now,
Right.
more modern Stoics can be atheists. You can be a Christian and be a Stoic. So it's very diverse in terms in accepting of different spiritual beliefs. So you can have this idea of a soul and think that you're not an animal if you would like, because it would be agreeable to the Stoic point of view. But at the same time, it's like, I don't agree with that. I don't agree that we have the divine in us or anything like that. I think that we should strive to be more reasonable, and that is the ultimate goal.
Agreed.
So this is, where I disagree with a lot of the Stoics and stuff like that. But anyway, moving on. Do not believe the poet who says, the boar his wrath forgets, the stag forgets the hounds, the bear forgets how midst the herd he leapt with frantic bounds. When he speaks of beasts being angry, he means that they're excited, roused up, for indeed they know no more how to be angry than they know how to pardon. Dumb creatures have not human feelings, but have certain impulses which resemble them. For if it were not so, they would feel love and hate. They would likewise be capable of friendship and enmity, of disagreement and agreement, which they do, of course. We've kind of gone over this already.
Right. I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, that's fine. That's the whole idea, is to have the discussion and to see, what we can take away from this and what can be kind of discarded as, wrong, ultimately incorrect or unreasonable with the information we now have.
Right.
So, continuing on, some traces of these qualities exist even in them, though properly all of them, whether good or bad, belong to the human breast alone. To no creature besides man has been given wisdom, foresight, industry, and reflection. To animals, not only human virtues, but even human vices are forbidden. Their whole constitution, mental and bodily, is unlike that of human beings. In them, the royal and leading principle is drawn from another source, as, for instance, they possess a voice, yet not a clear one, but distinct and incapable of forming words, a tongue, but one which is fettered and not sufficiently nimble for complex movements. So they too possess intellect, the greatest attribute of all, but in a rough and an inexact condition. It is, consequently, able to grasp those visions and semblances which rouse it to action, but only in a cloudy and distinct fashion. So, yeah, it kind of goes on with more of the. It just kind of highlights the ignorance of the time again, because not only do we have different animals such as dolphins that have very clear and distinct and complex languages, but we also have examples of animals that definitely possess foresight and industrial ideas and practices.
And some of them have their own cultures and
Yep.
laws. If you look
Yes.
into hyenas,
Yeah.
hyenas have very complex societies and obvious laws,
Oh yeah.
and they are very strict.
Yeah, just like orangutans have their own laws, and bonobos have their own laws. So
Uh-huh.
a lot of the primate species do, and they have lawgivers, such as gorillas have the silverback, and you have to do what the silverback says.
Right.
Otherwise, the silverback will not protect the troop. So yeah, it's a lot. I think that if Seneca had access to what we now know, he would not have had this conclusion. But nonetheless,
He didn't have a David Attenborough.
yeah, poor guy. He's been deprived.
It's true.
It follows from this that their impulses and outbreaks are violent, and that they do not feel fear, anxieties, grief, or anger, but some semblances of these feelings. Wherefore they quickly drop them and adopt the converse of them. They graze after showing the most vehement rage and terror, and after frantic bellowing and plunging, they straightway sink into quiet sleep. So I imagine, like, when you're looking at sheep or any kind of cattle, then this is the truth, right? I mean, if you just say, like, you have a bull who's enraged, 1 minute, and then the next minute he's like totally cool, you know. So there are examples of this, but it's a very general idea of animals.
Maybe they're just better at dealing with their stress than we are.
Yeah, it could be
We would ruminate, and that maybe they're just like, well, not in clear and present danger anymore. I can relax, so I'm gonna relax. Give me something to eat, and I'm gonna take a nap.
Yeah, they don't have the same kind of worries that we do. Like,
Right.
a lot of our anxiety is caused by the past or the future, mainly the future, right?
Right.
We're anxious about what's going to happen tomorrow. We're anxious about whether or not we're going to have enough food, or whether or not the lights will stay on, or if it's going to snow, if it's going to snow, or if there's going to be ice, or what have you. These are things that are of legitimate concern, but we spend way too much more time on them than we should.
Right.
So that's kind of the takeaway from this, in my opinion. I mean, the examples of the animals might not be accurate, but at the same time, it does make you consider whether or not the things, the anger, the anxieties that you're holding on to are something that is necessary.
Right. Well, I think a real and imagined fears are two things that are very important, because I think that's also a difference between how some people problem solve.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who only deal with the real worry or fear right now and won't deal with the imagined. And I call the imagined fear like female,
Uh-oh.
because women are always planning. I'm not saying men don't plan. I'm just saying. I
Uh-oh.
know I start my winter preparations in July. So,
I think you do have a point there. Not generally speaking that men don't plan. Don't leave me any angry comments. We don't have that position.
right.
But more women are more prone to biologically to hoard things. I think than men are. Just broadly speaking. I mean, there are men that hoard and gather and stuff like that and collect.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know
But
plenty of
but we're more driven to biologically, I think, to do like nesting and things like this. So yeah, I think you have a point there.
those. Yeah. I consider that a feminine thing, even though men do it too. Because, you know.
Yeah, and like, I'm not sure. I'll have to, if somebody correct me, but I'm pretty sure that I read a study a few years back that kind of compared the anxiety levels of men and women, and it does tend to be that the majority of women tend to have more anxious feelings than men typically do. That men are able to kind of deal with it in a different way, perhaps.
Right.
But like I said, it could be wrong. I'll have to look into it, and if I find it, I'll link the source. But yeah. Anyways, so
So,
any of overall comments or questions about what we've read today, other than what we've addressed?
No, I I think it's interesting. And I also, I'm not jumping through the, oh, well, they were completely wrong about the animal thing. Because maybe, well, I can't tell you what they're thinking about,
Right.
like a creature, or what their fears are, um, or how they're dealing with their stress. But I'm sure that in the current climate change conditions, we'll see more data than we've ever seen before about how creatures are going to deal with stress.
Oh, yikes. Well, in terms of, the human aspect of this, what are your thoughts?
Uh, I think he's got it right. And it's kind of disturbing how a lot of what he's talking about can be actually timeless and still going on today.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Like if we had taken, I guess, 70% of this as a human topic to deal with, or a study or a classroom thing, would human beings have been dealing with anger issues, rage issues, conflict issues more seriously then? And would we be better off now?
You're freaking psychic, because I was about to ask you. I was about to say, now, what do you think what would the difference be if this were commonly taught to everyone?
I
To
think this would be a very good thing, because anger is extremely uncomfortable. Nobody likes to talk about it. It's
right.
like, oh, well, they'll just deal it. Everyone deals with this their own way. But aren't there more productive ways of dealing with your feelings?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to expect people to come to deal with their anger on their own without some kind of guide or method is wishful thinking. I mean,
It's
grant,
cruel.
granted, I've read this and thought, oh my god, I've thought about it, but did I really think about it? It just kind of crossed my mind that maybe I need to let go of some of this stuff. That maybe it was bad for me. Maybe I was seeing the world in a way that was detrimental to my health,
Right.
both my psyche and my body, because when you're in anger, it changes your entire physiology. You react to it. Your body reacts to it and puts a lot of stress on the body. So, yeah, I think that if we were discussing these issues instead of sweeping them under the rug or expecting people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, then maybe we could have a lot more progress than we've seen. It wouldn't fix everything at all. I have no I'm not an idealist. I don't think that if everybody adopts stoicism that the world's going to be perfect. Absolutely not. But I think that it would do a lot more good than it would harm to actually look at this. Just saying, consider it, people.
Well,
Be a part of the
think about
education.
anger, though. If someone can manipulate your anger,
Hmm.
they can manipulate your actions and your behavior
And your vote.
and your vote.
Yep.
So being able to mitigate your fears and such
Hmm.
would be so much more useful.
Yes. If you're able to put a reasonable check on your emotions, you're going to make better, more rational decisions, and it's good for the society.
Yeah.
Better, healthier individuals, individuals who think better and aren't swayed by crazy hyperbole, make for better citizens and thus better society. So, I think I'm going to leave it on that.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
that's a perfect
yeah.
stopping point.
Yeah, and like and share this out, guys, and because we want to have more of this discussion. And be sure to click the link below to subscribe to Wonder Lady's channel. She's having
Oh,
awesome discussions, awesome questions. Enjoy her interrogations; they're fabulous.
thank you.
And thank you for watching. Bye.
Bye.